Hello, everybody. My name is Rod Thompson, and you are viewing my show called "You Come to the Right Place." Um, this is the second show. For all you who are tuning in for the first time, let me briefly go over. I don't have a lot of time to quite explain everything, but I will get into as much as I possibly can. You come to the right place. This is all about a show that's about enlightenment. It's about awakening the conscious mind to get out and to take advantages of the resources and tools to be economically free. Some people call it financial freedom. This is a awakening more than anything. It's life experiences. It's all about adjustments to your personal lifestyle. It's all about you getting up and taking control of your life, and that's what the show is pertaining to. So some of the things that I am doing on this show is trying to find the source, get to the source, talk about the source, and then try to articulate it to the point to where we are able to do some things with what's available to us out here economically. That includes my last show, which I went over a brief study of and what it is and what to do. It was about taxes. It was about taking advantage of taxes, getting a larger refund, whether it be in return or credits, depending on if you ever file taxes or not. But one of the things that I discussed was incorporating to in order to take advantages of the tax codes that's out there, because it was more advantage it was more advantageous to be able to be incorporated and get tax breaks than to just simply just file, get that rapid refund, and then go on. You have more deductibles when you are incorporated. So those were the things that are going back. So if you didn't have the opportunity to do so, do go back and check out that show that previously was shot. Today, I will be discussing contracts and the principles of contracts. And just to kind of break it down, or to go before I actually get into the study of it, we live in a society, and I'm always going to elaborate on this, but we live in a society where contracts are the most fundamental thing in our lifespan. We're going to come into contract a million times. A lot of people, you know what a contract is, but you don't really know how it operates. Kind of like driving a car. You know how to drive a car, but then you don't know how it actually was built. You don't know every component in it, but you know how to operate it. With a contract, it's the same thing. People know only when it's set in front of you that you just simply need to sign. And to be honest, and I'm gonna be honest with you, before I actually got into law, I have a background in law. I do financial consultancy, and I also have a background in law. Before I got into law, I didn't know anything about contracts. Again, this is one of our setbacks that comes from a dysfunctional family, because I say that we all come from dysfunctional family because we were not taught financial literacy. We were not taught about contract. We were not taught about law. We wasn't taught these things. Yet these are predicated upon us every single day. We run into an agreement with an establishment in order to use services. So, even if you walk into, let's say, a McDonald's and you order food, that's still a contract. That's still an agreement, because you're saying, hey, I want this service. Well, again, there's a contract on both sides, and we're going to get into what the differences of those contracts are, because there's a sectionals of what each contract represents. But do you understand that using money, the fiat, is a contract? Although you might use this tender, legal tender, it's still a contract. Why it's a contract with the government? Because it's a medium of exchange between two peoples or persons, that you agree to pay this amount, and that this amount represents this amount. Whether you know it or not, that's a contract. I mean, there's simplicity of how to explain how the contract or what is a contract, but we want to be able to get knowledgeable about how the contract is created, how it is used, and then how from now on, after this show, and again, this is only to get you started. This is an awakening show. This isn't the do it all or this is it. There's more to this, but what my purpose is to try to get you into the form of understanding that everyday life, these things that's going on in your life, it's things like contracts, it's things like law, it's things like the taxes are being predicated on you and it's being used against you. And the whole purpose of this now is to take those things, fold it back on itself, and then allow you to be empowered. So this is a show of empowerment. It's made to make you alive again because these things were things that were taken advantage of. And again, you wasn't taught in the household, you wasn't taught in school, you wasn't taught by the government. But yet these are the things that you have to come in contact and have to use every single day throughout your entire life. You have to use money, but yet you don't truly know how it operates. You have to sign contracts, but you truly don't know how it's formed or what's the purpose of it and how to make sure that it's properly executed. All you know is that you want this certain thing, and then they, the corporations or the businesses or whatnot, or whoever pushes this document in front of you and say, "Here, we just need your signature." Well, you got to understand how that's broken down. So that's why I'm here today to give you that, because first thing we have to do is discuss a contract, and we got to understand what the components are. And so by understanding what those components are, then we are then armed to be able to go to war with individuals when they put these documents in front of us, and we say, hold up. See this right here? We need to change this because this right here puts you in advantage, and there's no obligation on your end if this defaults. So again, when you go inside, let's say a car dealership, and I'm definitely going to tell you the secret about that. It's called a switcheroo. They put a contract on you and say, hey, you want to buy this car, and you agree that on these terms that we have on this piece of paper that you will abide by these obligations, and then you sign your name, and then boom, there it is. So these are the things that we need to be conscious of. This is something that very important, because if you are knowledgeable about contracts, you then become more structural, you become more dependent, and then you're now on the process and the path of being able to create your own contracts and to start accumulating this and processing this over to creating your wealth. So we're back to this wealth thing. Now, again, some of my stories I can tell you about contracts would flip you out. I'm not going to do that. Instead, because the time frame, because again, time is very important. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to take up more time than necessary, because you need to be out here trying to master this world, just like I do. I don't need to take up my time in order to articulate such information that's going to be frivolous to you. I need to give you what's pertinent, what's important. So I'm going to start breaking down contracts, because you have what's called bilateral contracts and unilateral contracts. I'm pretty sure some of you or most of you know what that is. In case you don't, I'm going to explain what a bilateral contract is first. A bilateral contract is a reciprocal arrangement between two parties by which each promises to perform an act in exchange for the other party's act. Now, I'm going to read that again. A bilateral contract is a reciprocal arrangement between two parties by which each promises to perform an act in exchange for the other party's act. So, what comes to mind when you think of a bilateral contract? That's when you want services. Let's break it down. It's like utility company, phone company, cars. When you go in to buy something, they already have a contract drawn up. It's already pre-written. The only thing they have to do is just fill in small things such as price and interest rate, but still the services and what they're required including lenders and banks, they pretty much already have a contract in place. And the only thing they need in order to activate that contract is your signature. So um, let's look at what bilateral contracts are most common for. Uh, the type of agreement that generally comes to mind when contracts are mentioned, each party is both an obligator, a person who is bound to another, to his own promise, and obligee, a person who is obligated or bound on the other party's promise. For one of these contracts to be legally binding, there must be some type of record that all parties agree to the terms. Typically, this takes the form of a signed contract. All right. Bilateral contracts are extremely common. Simple examples include contracts of sale in a house. Home buyer agrees to pay the seller a certain amount of money in exchange for the title to the home. The home seller agrees to deliver the title in exchange for a specified sale price. If either party fails to complete their end of the bargain, the result is a breach of contract. Let's keep that in mind. Take note of that because we're going to get back to how a lot of contracts that you are partially under right now, or particularly in a time of frame at one point in time was under a contract and that was a breach by a business or anyone else, yet you never even brung it up. You just said, oh, well, I'm not going to use the service. No, 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 no. You can hold them liable because if they at any point in time don't uphold their end of the agreement, then they're in a breach of contract, which there's several ways to have that settled, including you're able to receive compensation. You're able to receive the services for free. But first, let's finish breaking down what bilateral contract before I get back to the breach of contract part. Business contracts are bilateral in almost every circumstance. Virtually every business provides some sort of product or service in exchange for financial compensation. And most businesses are therefore constantly entering into bilateral contracts with their customers or suppliers. Again, that's why I was telling you about bilateral contracts where they already have their services in place, they already have their agreements in place, and the only thing you're doing is signing your name and agreeing for those services. Now, to finish this off, so let's go back. Employment contracts by which a company promises to pay an employee at a certain rate for completing specified tasks are also bilateral contracts. So, again, we're breaking down bilateral contracts. We're talking about what they're obligated. Now, bilateral contracts are also contracts between your employment. So you got to understand. So this company is already in existence. You ask for a job. They agree to pay you a specified amount of money for that job. And at all times, they're obligated by your performance to have to pay you. Now, again, performance, and if you're taking notes, is very important. Write this down. Performance is also very important in a contract because, again, without the obligation of performance, a person is able to break that agreement. And we've seen plenty of times where someone agrees to do something and they don't perform on it. Whether you know it or not. Let's say, for instance, your neighbor knocks on the door and say, hey, I'm going to come over your house and cut your grass Saturday. Whether you know it or not, that's a contract. People have been sued for agreements like that because that's a verbal contract. You don't have to necessarily sign your name. You don't have to necessarily have a documentation. It's now, back in the day, the old saying was your word was bond. That was one of the things of record, saying that, hey, we didn't have a physical contract, but we had a verbal contract, an agreement for them to provide a service, and they didn't do it. So therefore, they breached that agreement, and I am seeking compensation for that. So, again, we're going to wrap this around again. All right, now, bilateral contracts is distinct from unilateral contracts. The primary difference being that a bilateral contract has reciprocal obligations. In a unilateral contract, a party is under obligation to fulfill certain terms, usually a transfer of funds if only a party B completes a specified task. But part B is not actually obliged to complete the task if they don't want to. Whoa, wait a minute. Did we just hear this correctly? On a bilateral contract, if the individual, even though you agree to pay them, they're not obligated to actually provide the obligated task if they don't want to. And these bilateral are the actual contracts that the corporations, the businesses, the credit card companies, the mortgage companies, these are all contracts that are bilateral. And according to their agreement that they provided to you, promising to give you a service, there's a such thing as an agreement with bilateral party B is that they don't actually have to be obliged to complete the task if they don't want to. Because there is no guarantee that tasks will be completed in a little government agreement. They're effectively never used in business. Okay, so that's a part of bilateral. Does that seem right? No. Okay, now, so let's listen to what unilateral contract is. A unilateral contract is a contract created by an offer that can only be accepted by performance. A unilateral contract can be formed by an express offer stating that the offer can be accepted through performance. Another example of unilateral contract is reward or contest. So, there's a secret inside bilateral contracts that I want to bring to your attention. And this is the unconscionable agreement. It's sort of contracts that are unconscionable. And let me read that what that means. It's sometimes known as dealing in a conduct in a doctrine. Contract law describes terms that are so extremely unjust or overwhelmingly one-sided in the favor of the party who have the superior bargaining power that they are contracted to good conscience. So, if we're saying that an unconscionable contract is one that's one-sided in favor of the party who has superior bargaining power, how many of you deal with this all the time when you're signing a contract with phone companies? You might have phone service, mobile, T-Mobile, Sprint, and they're overcharging you, and you go and complain about it or whatnot. And there's really not much you can do but complain. But in the end, you either can pay that high bill or they can adjust it. But yet, in the end, they still got away with doing one thing, which is they took advantage of you as a customer, and you was mistreated, but then you was not justly compensated or whatnot. Happens all the time, right? So let me ask you a question. Does this sound like some of the situation that you've been in a one-sided agreement, although it was agreement between you two? Well, here's how this breaks down. There's 4 components to a contract, and you got to understand this. Number 1 is the offer. The offer is what it is. I'm offering you this, and you can decide if you want it or not. The second is consideration. That's the second component of a contract. Is when you think about it, you say, do I really want this? Am I willing to pay this amount? Am I willing to pay this services? Am I willing to go through this specified amount of time or months or whatnot? And 3, mutual assent. That's when, you say, okay, if you agree to do this, I agree to do this. And we both come together. And then it's agreed upon and say, okay, yeah, we agree. And I think we can definitely agree to terms on this. So then that comes in the 4th component, which is the acceptance. The acceptance part is that you agree, you accept to it, and now you're ready to sign that contract. So again, you have 4 components to a contract. The first thing is an offer. The second thing is consideration. The third thing is mutual assent, and then the 4th is acceptance. So with these components, without all 4 of them, with just 3 of them, you don't have a binding contract. So if for any reason that there's something in that contract that wasn't discussed, agreed upon, isn't there something along the lines that should allow you to withdraw from that contract, or you can raise up to make the claim of breach of contract? Which, if in any case that does happen, you have what's called the right to rescind signature. Anytime that someone takes advantage of a contract or agreement, or they create a contract that's only advantages in their position, again, as this was saying about an unconscionable contract where it was created by the superior bargaining power, and they took advantage of your knowledge and what you lack, you have the right to rescind. Now, again, this is depending on what state you're in when you're actually making this claim. But if you have to look at the laws of what state you're in. I have to remind you, they have different state laws based on this right here. But you have the right to rescind your signature anytime that there's a breach of contract, anytime that there's fraud or deceit or anything like that, and is there. So again, when they're threatening you with some type of penalty for trying to withdraw or break out the contract, um, you can make the claim of breach of contract, and then that gives you the right to rescind. Again, this is only part of the equation. So again, do your research. I'm only here to um, awaken the mind, to enlighten the mind. Um, I'm not giving you any type of legal advice or any type of representation towards anything. These are just facts. These are simply information for you to continue to attain that education. This is not the complete and all end of all things, but this is just kind to elaborate further about things again that we have not had the conversation at our dinner tables or in our schools with our teachers or anytime with our government officials. These are the things, well, at least not in my household, but I'm sure there's many of you out there in society that endured the same thing growing up. Our backgrounds can differ from many aspects, but if you are one of the individuals such as myself growing up and you didn't grow up being taught these things are very important because, again, you got to understand that even when you get pulled over by a police officer and for speeding for anything or any type of traffic law violations, and they write you a ticket, that's a contract, and that contract is a promise to appear in court. And I'm later on, I'm going to actually cover that because I'm going to teach you how to actually deal with tickets. Because again, a lot of individuals think that the police officer pulls you over, he gives you a ticket, you have to sign for it. You don't have to sign for it. And if you are pulled over, and I'll say this and I'll cover this again when I'm actually speaking on law. If you're pulled over by a police officer and they write you a ticket, you can simply ask them, is my signature voluntarily or mandatory? And if that officer says that your signature is mandatory, write this on that ticket. Write your name down and then put without recourse or prejudice. And again, like I said, I'm going to elaborate further when I'm actually speaking on law. Today I'm talking about contracts. But what that does is that reserves your rights. It doesn't waive them because whether you know it or not, when you sign the ticket, you're actually waiving your rights away. And so when you go into court and you're trying to argue something, you already signed and agreed that the speeding ticket is correct. So again, these are contracts, again, that you don't know about, you don't understand. Again, it's being predicated upon you. It's being used against you every single day by corporations, by your government, by businesses every single day. They are using contracts against our ignorance, our lack of understanding. And it's time we stop that. It's time that we understand and become armed with the knowledge, with the thinking ability to say, listen, I'm not going to be taken advantage of anymore. This is a contract, and before I put my name on that thing, I have to understand, I got to sit down, I got to dissect, I got to break this thing down, because I'm not putting my signature on anything that will cause me to lose my freedom, cause me my money, cause me some type of penalty, cause me anything that will sway away from what is rightfully mine. Again, you have the right. By your Constitution of the United States, you have the right, and it's in your Constitution, that in the Fifth Amendment, You have a right to due process. And anyone trying to infringe on your due process is violating the United States Constitution. I don't care who it is, police officer, governor, mayor, president. I don't care who it is. Your constitutional rights, it amends and it upholds anything that anyone else says. So no one is privy to obstructing your unalienable rights to the Constitution. Again, we're talking about contracts, and uh, you got to become. And I will do this right here. I want to talk about a book that you all should definitely get. It's called Restatement of Contract. Um, you can email me. I can send you a PDF. My email is rodthompson@usa.com. That's RODTHOMPSON@usa.com. Again, if you have any questions, you can send me your questions and I will answer them diligently as soon as I can get to them. I'll read on the shows. I'll be reading a lot of your questions and whatnot and answer those questions. But get the book or get the PDF. I'll send it to you. But it's created by American Law Institute, ALI. The restatement of contract will break down everything I'm telling you and then more. I recommend you get this book or PDF, ebook, however, but this is the study that you need to study when it comes down to contracts. Because again, whether you're creating it or if you're obtaining one for some services, you need to understand those services and you need to be able to negotiate those services because you don't have to agree to everything. You have the right. When it's agreement by both parties, you have a right to amend that contract. You don't have to go in and accept everything that they give you. You don't have to take that. Tell them, take that back. Don't give me this. This right here for you. This don't obligate you. We're gonna put this in here that makes you perform as well as I have to perform. So as long as I'm performing, you gotta perform too. I'm not going to be sitting around here giving you my money and then you decide whenever you want to obstruct that or you want to just walk off from that or not give me the services that I'm paying for. No. This is a contract. This is an agreement. And this is a contract that's in place because if for any reason that neither one of us held, you don't have to provide my services if I don't pay you. That's in this agreement. Well, where is it that protects me? So if someone giving you a contract and there's no protection in that for you, you can renegotiate that. Wait, no. Okay, well then here's my contract. You got to sign that. But at all times, we need to make sure that there's a performance on the other end of the party who you're agreeing to. Make sure that they're performing. Because again, you need your aspect of knowing that they're going to fulfill their end of the agreement. So we need to have a performance contract for everything that we are receiving from. Because again, if they're obligated by something, it should be obligated they perform just as well. And if you're going through this contract, and again, you take the time to go read through this thing, don't just sign it right away. And ask questions, because again, a lot of this stuff, you might not understand it. You might need someone who's knowledgeable to look over it. You don't take it right then and there. You want that car or whatever. Tell them, hold up. Let me make sure. Let me look this over. Let me contemplate it. Let me talk with my advisors. And your advisor should be your wife or your husband or vice versa, whether you're married or not. And these are the discussions that you should be having beforehand. These are discussions that should be going on between wife, husband, children, cousins, grandma, aunties, uncles, everybody. Y'all need to, friends, it need to be a discussion about these things all the time because our community lacks that. That's what keeps us so separated because we do not come together and we don't congregate and we don't make plans. We don't create ideas into actionable, executable actions. And that's what we need to start the day at. And again, this is me, Rod Thompson. This is the end of my show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Continue to tune in, and we will be enlightened together. Again, you can reach me at rodthompson@usa.com. God bless you. Good night.